Have you ever wondered how a Hollywood production convinced the US military to provide real Black Hawk helicopters for a film about America's most embarrassing military failure? The UH-60 helicopters in Black Hawk Down weren't just props, but active-duty aircraft, and the production's insurance costs exceeded the entire budget of some independent films. Today we're counting down 20 weird facts about Black Hawk Down's UH-60 helicopters that will completely change how you see this legendary war film. From pilots who'd actually flown in Mogadishu to modifications that voided military airworthiness certificates, these revelations might just blow your mind. So, buckle up. Hit that like button if you love military aviation and realistic war films, and let's fly into the secrets behind Ridley Scott's most ambitious aerial sequences. Number 20. The U.S. Army provided 8 real Black Hawk helicopters. Black Hawk Down's production used 8 genuine U.S. Army UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters, not replicas or civilian variants. This represented unprecedented military cooperation for a film depicting American military failure. The Department of Defense typically supports films portraying U.S. forces positively. Black Hawk Down told the story of the 1993 Battle of Mogadishu, where 18 American soldiers died, and 2 helicopters were shot down in a disastrous urban combat operation. Despite the sensitive subject matter, the Army agreed to support the production. The decision came from senior Pentagon officials who believed the film honored the soldiers' bravery despite the mission's failure. The Army provided helicopters from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the same unit involved in the actual Mogadishu operation. These weren't training aircraft or older models, but current frontline Black Hawks identical to those used in ongoing operations. The 8 helicopters were deployed to Morocco, where filming occurred, requiring a massive logistical operation. Each Black Hawk had to be disassembled, transported by cargo aircraft, then reassembled in Morocco. The deployment cost the Army approximately $2.3 million in transportation. However, the Pentagon considered this valuable training for deploying aviation units to unfamiliar environments. The production paid the Army approximately $1.8 million for helicopter use, maintenance, and pilot services, making it one of cinema's most expensive vehicle rentals. Number 19. 3 of the pilots had actually flown in Mogadishu. The U.S. Army pilots flying Black Hawks during production included 3 who had participated in the actual 1993 Battle of Mogadishu. These pilots were Night Stalkers from the 160th SOAR, who'd flown combat missions during the real operation depicted in the film. Their involvement created extraordinary authenticity, but also intense emotional complexity. The pilots watched actors portray their friends and colleagues, some of whom had died in the battle. They flew the same mission profiles they'd flown 8 years earlier, recreating traumatic experiences for cameras. Director initially didn't know about the pilot's combat history. The information emerged during production when one pilot had an emotional breakdown while filming a crash sequence that mirrored how his friend's helicopter had gone down. Scott consulted with military psychologists about whether continuing was ethical. The pilots insisted on continuing, stating they wanted the film to accurately portray what happened. Their first-hand knowledge proved invaluable. They corrected flight paths, tactical procedures, and radio communications that the script had wrong. They explained how pilots actually reacted under fire versus Hollywood assumptions. However, their participation required special counseling support. Army psychologists were present throughout filming, monitoring the pilots for post-traumatic stress reactions. One pilot had to be temporarily removed from flying duties after experiencing flashbacks during a particularly intense sequence. The 3 Mogadishu veterans were credited as technical advisors in addition to their pilot roles. Number 18. Morocco banned low-altitude urban flying. After production incidents, the Black Hawks performed numerous low-altitude flights over populated areas, creating unprecedented spectacles that Moroccan authorities eventually banned. The U.S. Army pilots flew tactical profiles matching actual combat operations. Low-altitude, high-speed passes. Moroccan aviation authorities initially approved these flights with specific restrictions. However, the restrictions were repeatedly violated as the production pushed for more dramatic shots. In one incident, a Black Hawk flew between buildings with less than 15 feet of rotor clearance on each side. The extreme flying created rotor wash that damaged buildings. Multiple complaints led to investigation by Moroccan authorities. Another incident saw a Black Hawk flying at approximately 50 feet over a crowded marketplace. The Moroccan government issued cease and desist orders, threatening to expel the production. Intense diplomatic negotiations involving the U.S. State Department eventually allowed filming to continue with drastically increased restrictions. However, the incidents led Morocco to implement permanent regulations prohibiting low-altitude helicopter operations over populated areas for film productions. The new regulations effectively ended Morocco's viability as a location for realistic military aviation filming. The production paid approximately $375,000 in compensation for damages and injuries caused by helicopter operations. Number 17. The crash scenes used hydraulically controlled helicopter mock-ups. The dramatic helicopter crash sequences couldn't be filmed with real Black Hawks for obvious safety and cost reasons. Instead, the production built 3 full-scale hydraulically controlled helicopter mock-ups specifically for destruction. Each mock-up cost approximately $450,000 to construct. The mock-ups were built on massive hydraulic platforms that were programmed with precise motion sequences replicating how helicopters actually behave when shot down. The programming was based on data from actual helicopter crashes, including flight recorder information from the Mogadishu incident. The interiors were completely accessible, with removable walls allowing camera placement impossible in real helicopters. The hydraulic platforms could rotate the mock-ups 360 degrees, tilt to 90-degree angles, and create violent shaking matching combat damage scenarios. For the actual crash impacts, the mock-ups were rigged with explosive charges that fragmented them in controlled patterns. Each mock-up was used only once for its primary destruction sequence. The crashed helicopter wreckage seen throughout the film's ground combat sequences came from these destroyed mock-ups. Building 3 mock-ups allowed filming multiple crash angles and scenarios. The investment in realistic mock-ups rather than CGI was deliberate. Number 16. Josh Hartnett required 40 hours of helicopter training. Josh Hartnett, playing Staff Sergeant Matt Eversman, underwent 40 hours of intensive helicopter training despite never actually flying a Black Hawk during filming. The training was necessary because Eversman spent significant screen time inside helicopters during insertion and extraction sequences. Director Ridley Scott demanded authentic behavior from actors in helicopter environments. Hartnett's training began with classroom instruction covering helicopter aerodynamics, safety procedures, and emergency protocols. He learned how Black Hawks handled what various sounds meant, and how soldiers positioned themselves during tactical operations. The practical training involved over 20 flights in actual Black Hawks. Hartnett experienced combat-style insertions, including phased rope operations, tactical approaches, and evasive maneuvers. He flew during various conditions: day, night, smooth air, and turbulent weather. The training taught Hartnett to react authentically to helicopter motion. Untrained actors tense up and brace awkwardly during helicopter maneuvers. Trained individuals relax and move naturally with the aircraft's motion. The 40-hour investment shows on screen. Hartnett's character looks completely comfortable in the helicopter environments, moving naturally during flight sequences. Other cast members received similar but less extensive training. Supporting actors got approximately 10 hours each. The total cast helicopter training exceeded 300 hours and cost the production approximately $120,000 in flight time and instruction. However, the authentic actor behavior elevated the film's realism significantly. Number 15. The Black Hawk's miniguns. Fired blank ammunition, costing $12,000 daily. The M134 miniguns mounted on the Black Hawks fired genuine blank ammunition during filming, creating authentic muzzle flash, sound, and spent casings. The production used approximately 8,000 rounds of 7.62mm blank ammunition daily during sequences requiring minigun fire. Blank ammunition for miniguns costs approximately $1.50 per round, significantly more than live ammunition due to specialized manufacturing. Daily ammunition costs reached $12,000 during peak filming periods. The total ammunition expenditure exceeded $400,000 across the production schedule. The Army provided the miniguns and mounting systems, but the production had to purchase blank ammunition commercially. Military blank ammunition stocks couldn't be diverted to film production. The miniguns created spectacular visual effects, with cycling barrels, muzzle flash, and brass casings ejecting in streams. However, the blank fire created safety challenges. Blank rounds produced significant muzzle blast and heat despite lacking projectiles. Safety zones had to be established, preventing anyone from being in the line of fire. The noise was deafening, requiring all personnel to wear hearing protection. The spent brass casings ejected at high velocity, requiring protective barriers preventing injury to actors and crew. Despite being blanks, the miniguns required the same safety protocols as live weapons. Army weapons specialists supervised all minigun operations, ensuring proper handling and safety compliance. Number 14. The helicopters required. Complete rewiring for camera systems. Installing cameras throughout the Black Hawks required completely rewiring the aircraft's electrical systems. The modifications were so extensive they temporarily voided the helicopter's military airworthiness certificates. Each Black Hawk needed multiple cameras: cockpit cameras capturing pilot actions, cabin cameras filming actors, external cameras mounted on airframe capturing flight sequences. The camera systems required substantial electrical power beyond the helicopter's standard capacity. Aviation electrical engineers designed custom power distribution systems, providing camera power without affecting flight-critical systems. The modifications required running new wiring harnesses throughout each aircraft. Panels had to be removed, new circuits installed, and everything reinstalled to military specifications. Each helicopter required approximately 120 hours of electrical modification work. The rewiring had to be completely reversible. The Army required the Black Hawks return to original configuration after filming. Every modification was photographed and documented, so technicians could restore original wiring exactly. The temporary modifications technically made the aircraft non-airworthy under military regulations. Special waivers were required from Army aviation authorities, allowing the modified Black Hawks to fly for film production. The waivers specified that only Army pilots could fly the modified aircraft and imposed restrictions on weather conditions and flight profiles. After production, each helicopter spent approximately 80 hours being restored to original configuration. Army inspectors verified every modification was properly removed before the aircraft returned to operational status. 13. The rotor wash destroyed. Over $60,000 in set dressing. The Black Hawk's powerful rotor wash created constant destruction of carefully prepared sets. Each UH-60 generates winds exceeding 70 miles per hour beneath its rotor disc. This hurricane-force wind scattered props, destroyed set dressing, and ruined meticulously arranged scenes. The production design team dressed Moroccan streets to resemble Mogadishu with debris, abandoned vehicles, market stalls, and various urban details. A single Black Hawk hover would scatter everything, destroying hours of preparation work. Production designer Arthur Max implemented multiple strategies to minimize destruction. Heavy props were bolted down or weighted with sandbags. Lightweight materials were replaced with heavier substitutes. Some set dressing was digitally added in post-production to avoid rotor wash entirely. Despite precautions, the rotor wash caused continuous damage. Market stalls constructed from authentic materials would disintegrate. Carefully arranged debris fields would scatter chaotically. Dust clouds would obscure cameras, requiring scene resets. The production maintained a dedicated team of approximately 20 people, whose sole job was repairing rotor wash damage between takes. They'd rush in after each helicopter pass, reassembling scattered props and resetting disturbed materials. The cycle repeated dozens of times daily. The total cost of destroyed and damaged set dressing exceeded $60,000. Some scenes required complete set reconstruction multiple times. The production eventually built permanent weighted props, specifically designed to withstand rotor wash, but these looked less authentic than original materials. Number 12. Night vision. Sequences required. Special helicopter lighting modifications. The film's night vision sequences, showing green-tinted views from inside helicopters, required special infrared lighting modifications to the Black Hawks. Night vision goggles amplify available light, including infrared wavelengths invisible to human eyes. To film realistic night vision footage, the production needed to recreate the lighting environment soldiers actually experienced. The Black Hawks were fitted with infrared floodlights that illuminated scenes without producing visible light. These lights powered the night vision effect, creating the characteristic green glow when filmed through night vision cameras. However, the modifications created complications. The infrared lights required significant electrical power, adding to the already strained electrical systems. The lights also produced substantial heat, requiring additional cooling systems, preventing fire hazards. Cinematographer Slawomir Idziak worked with night vision equipment manufacturers to develop camera systems that could capture authentic night vision imagery. Standard film cameras couldn't see infrared light. Special camera modifications and filters were necessary. The production used military-grade image intensifier tubes identical to those in actual night vision goggles. These tubes were integrated into film cameras, creating hybrid systems that captured true night vision perspectives. The modified cameras were incredibly sensitive to light. Any visible light contamination would bloom out the image. Filming night vision sequences required complete darkness except for infrared illumination. The technical complexity made night vision sequences among the most difficult and expensive to film. Number 11. The production insurance cost more than the film's marketing budget, ensuring Black Hawk. Down's helicopter operations cost more than the entire marketing budget for many studio films. The insurance premiums reached $11.3 million, approximately 13% of the film's total production budget. Multiple factors drove the extraordinary insurance costs. Flying military helicopters in foreign countries created jurisdictional complications. Morocco's insurance requirements differed from U.S. standards. Flying over populated areas dramatically increased liability exposure. The low-altitude urban flying multiplied risks exponentially. Each helicopter was insured for approximately $20 million replacement value. The 8 Black Hawks represented $160 million in insured equipment. Personnel insurance covered military pilots, crew, actors, and ground personnel. The fatal helicopter crash during filming of Rambo 8 years earlier had made insurers extremely cautious about military helicopter filming. Underwriters demanded extensive safety protocols, multiple levels of oversight, and conservative operational restrictions. The production had to hire independent safety consultants who reported directly to insurance companies. These consultants had authority to halt filming if they deemed conditions unsafe. The insurance also covered potential third-party injuries or property damage from helicopter operations. Given the rotor wash damage and injuries that occurred, this coverage proved necessary. The production filed approximately 40 insurance claims totaling over $1 million in payouts. Despite the enormous cost, the insurance was mandatory. Number 10. The Somali extras were terrified of the real helicopters. The Moroccan extras hired to portray Somali civilians, and militia had no previous exposure to military helicopters. The Black Hawks terrified them during initial filming. Many extras fled when helicopters approached at low altitude, creating continuity problems and requiring multiple retakes. The rotor noise, downwash, and sheer size overwhelmed people unfamiliar with military aviation. Director Ridley Scott had to implement gradual desensitization training. Extras were first shown stationary helicopters from distance. Then they observed helicopters starting engines. Eventually, they experienced hovering helicopters from increasing proximity. The process took nearly 2 weeks before extras could remain in position during low passes. Some extras never acclimated and had to be replaced. Cultural factors intensified the fear. Many Moroccan extras came from rural areas where helicopters were rare. Military helicopters specifically carried associations with authority and danger. The production hired cultural liaisons, explaining that the helicopters were controlled and safe. Despite assurances, genuine fear shows in many extras' faces during helicopter scenes. This unintentional authenticity actually enhanced the film's realism, as actual Somali civilians would have feared approaching American helicopters. The production paid extras hazard bonuses for scenes requiring close helicopter proximity, compensating for psychological stress. Number 9. Real Rangers and Delta operators played themselves. The U.S. military provided not just equipment, but personnel. Several Army Rangers and Delta Force operators, who'd fought in Mogadishu, appeared in the film portraying themselves or fellow soldiers. Their involvement created extraordinary authenticity, but complicated production. These were active-duty special operations soldiers with ongoing classified responsibilities. Their participation required security clearances and operational security protocols. The soldiers couldn't discuss certain tactics, procedures, or equipment that remained classified. This created script limitations where realistic elements had to be removed, protecting operational security. The veterans corrected numerous details actors got wrong. Room clearing techniques, weapon handling, tactical communications, and small unit movements were refined based on their input. However, their presence sometimes intimidated professional actors. Elite soldiers' natural confidence and competence made actors feel inadequate performing military roles. Director Ridley Scott had to balance between military authenticity and actor comfort. The soldiers also struggled with acting. Following directions, hitting marks, and delivering lines felt unnatural. Many scenes required extensive takes as soldiers learned basic acting techniques. Despite challenges, their participation grounded the film in reality. The movement, bearing, and tactical execution displayed authentic special operations proficiency impossible to replicate with actors alone. Number 8. The Black Hawks used 3 different paint schemes. Sharp-eyed viewers noticed the Black Hawks display different paint schemes throughout the film. This wasn't continuity error, but deliberate choice reflecting operational reality. The 8 Army helicopters came from different units and time periods, each with slightly different paint configurations. Some wore standard Army green paint, others had tan desert camouflage from recent Middle East deployments. 2 helicopters retained experimental low-visibility gray schemes from special operations testing. Rather than repaint everything identically, production designer Arthur Max embraced the variation as authentic. Real military helicopter units often operate mixed paint fleets during transitions or when drawing aircraft from different sources. However, the variation created challenges. Establishing shots showing multiple helicopters revealed the inconsistent paint. Editors had to carefully select angles minimizing the visibility of paint differences. For close-up shots focusing on specific helicopters, the production tried maintaining consistency showing the same aircraft. But action sequences mixing multiple helicopters unavoidably revealed paint variations. Fans and military aviation enthusiasts noticed immediately, generating online discussions about the inconsistency. Some criticized it as sloppy continuity. Others praised it as realistic detail, showing actual military operations' improvised nature. The production never publicly acknowledged the intentional paint variation, allowing the debate to continue. Number 7. Ewan McGregor became violently airsick. During filming, Ewan McGregor, playing specialist John Grimes, suffered severe motion sickness during helicopter sequences. McGregor had never experienced air sickness before, but the Black Hawk's aggressive tactical flying overwhelmed his system. The Army pilots flew combat profiles, rapid altitude changes, sharp banking turns, and sudden accelerations matching actual Mogadishu operations. These maneuvers were far more aggressive than civilian helicopter operations. McGregor became nauseous during his first flight and vomited during the second. Production medics provided anti-nausea medication, but it caused drowsiness affecting his performance. McGregor tried alternative remedies including acupressure wristbands and ginger supplements with limited success. The problem forced production compromises. McGregor's helicopter scenes were filmed in shorter takes with frequent breaks. His close-ups were often filmed in the stationary soundstage mock-up, rather than flying aircraft. Wide shots showing his character use body doubles during actual flights. McGregor felt embarrassed by his physical limitations, especially compared to cast members who loved flying. Josh Hartnett and several others requested additional helicopter flights for enjoyment. McGregor's genuine queasiness actually enhanced his character's performance. Grimes was a desk clerk thrust into combat, naturally uncomfortable in military situations. McGregor's visible discomfort authentically portrayed that character. Number 6. The helicopter's radio chatter was actual Mogadishu battle audio. The radio communications heard during helicopter sequences weren't scripted dialogue. Much of it was actual audio recorded during the 1993 Battle of Mogadishu. The Army had preserved radio recordings from the battle, and the production obtained access through military cooperation. Sound designer Richard King worked with military advisors identifying usable segments. Some recordings were too graphic, containing death notifications and casualty reports inappropriate for the film. Other segments captured tactical communications, situation reports, and coordination between aircraft. These authentic recordings were mixed with new dialogue recorded by actors to create complete radio soundscapes. The authentic audio provided texture impossible to script or perform convincingly. Real combat communications have specific cadence, terminology, and emotional tone that actors struggle to replicate. Military veterans watching the film noted the radio chatter's exceptional authenticity. However, using actual battle audio raised ethical questions. Families of fallen soldiers heard their loved ones' voices in the film without prior notification. Some families appreciated hearing final transmissions. Others found it traumatic. The production hadn't anticipated this impact. After complaints, subsequent home video releases included warnings that the film contained actual combat audio. Some streaming versions replaced controversial segments with actor-performed dialogue out of respect for families. Number 5. 2 Black Hawks collided during filming. The production's worst near disaster occurred when 2 Black Hawks collided during a formation flying sequence. The helicopters were performing a scripted low-altitude pass over a crowded street set. During the maneuver, one pilot misjudged spacing, and his rotor discs struck the other helicopter's tail boom. The impact was relatively minor, but created catastrophic potential. The struck helicopter's tail rotor was damaged, causing severe vibration and yaw control problems. The pilot executed an emergency landing in a nearby clearing, setting down roughly but avoiding casualties. The striking helicopter experienced minor rotor damage, but remained controllable and landed normally. Investigation revealed multiple contributing factors. The Moroccan filming location's altitude and temperature affected helicopter performance differently than pilots anticipated. The tight formation spacing pushed safety margins beyond comfort. Communication between pilots was partially obscured by film production radio traffic on similar frequencies. The collision damaged both aircraft beyond field repair capability. They were grounded for the remainder of production in Morocco. The Army had to fly replacement helicopters from the United States, a process taking 3 weeks and costing approximately $400,000. Filming schedules were drastically revised around reduced helicopter availability. The incident reinforced why most productions use replicas rather than actual military aircraft. Now number 4. The dust clouds required. Adding artificial particulates. Morocco's filming locations didn't produce the dense dust clouds characteristic of Mogadishu's arid environment. When Black Hawks landed, the rotor wash created minimal visible dust, despite authentic desert surroundings. The problem was soil composition. Moroccan locations had heavier, moister soil than Somalia's powdery dirt. This threatened visual authenticity. The production solution involved adding artificial particulates. Special effects teams spread tons of finely ground material across landing zones before each take. The material was a mixture of talcum powder, diatomaceous earth, and colored dust, matching Mogadishu's characteristic tan-brown soil. When helicopters landed, rotor wash would suspend the artificial dust, creating spectacular clouds. However, the artificial dust created health hazards. Actors and crew inhaled the fine particles, causing respiratory irritation. Production medics treated dozens of cases of dust-induced coughing and breathing difficulty. The artificial dust also infiltrated camera equipment, causing mechanical failures and requiring constant cleaning. Several cameras required complete rebuilds after dust contamination. The powder coated everything, getting into costumes, weapons, and vehicles. The cleaning costs exceeded $80,000. Despite problems, the artificial dust was essential for visual authenticity. Mogadishu's defining visual characteristic was the oppressive dust clouds helicopters created. Without artificial enhancement, landing sequences looked wrong. The production used approximately 40 tons of artificial particulate throughout filming. Number 3. The helicopter's fuel came from U.S. military supply chain. The Black Hawks couldn't use commercial aviation fuel available in Morocco. They required JP-8 military jet fuel, meeting specific military specifications. Commercial jet AA fuel, while similar, has different additives and quality control standards potentially affecting military turbine engines. The Army refused to risk engine damage from non-specification fuel. This created massive logistical challenges. Morocco had no JP-8 fuel supplies. Every gallon had to be imported through military supply channels. The U.S. military established a dedicated fuel pipeline for the production, shipping JP-8 from European military bases to Morocco. Each Black Hawk consumed approximately 40 gallons per flight hour. 8 helicopters flying extensively required enormous fuel quantities. The production consumed over 50,000 gallons of JP-8 throughout filming. The fuel cost approximately $4 per gallon, including transportation, totaling $200,000 in fuel expenses alone. Storage was equally challenging. Military fuel requires specific storage conditions preventing contamination. The production established field fuel storage facilities meeting military specifications. Army petroleum specialists supervised all refueling operations, ensuring contamination prevention. The fuel logistics added substantial complexity and cost, but was non-negotiable. The Army wouldn't risk damaging turbine engines worth hundreds of thousands of dollars by using improper fuel. Number 2. Ridley Scott wanted to crash a real Black Hawk director. Ridley Scott's original vision included crashing an actual UH-60 Black Hawk for ultimate authenticity. He argued that practical effects always look more convincing than mock-ups or CGI. Scott proposed purchasing a retired Black Hawk from military surplus, modifying it for the crash sequence, and destroying it on camera. The U.S. Army immediately rejected this proposal. Even retired Black Hawks contain sensitive technology and systems. Allowing one to be destroyed for entertainment would set dangerous precedent. The Pentagon refused to facilitate purchasing a military helicopter for intentional destruction. Scott explored alternative sources. Several foreign countries operated Black Hawks and might sell retired airframes. However, export restrictions prevented purchasing military helicopters for film destruction. International arms control treaties prohibit transferring military equipment for non-military purposes in ways that could compromise sensitive technology. Scott even offered to purchase a crashed Black Hawk from military salvage. The Army refused, stating even destroyed helicopters contained restricted components. The rejection forced Scott to accept hydraulically controlled mock-ups instead. He remained disappointed, believing practical destruction would have elevated the film. However, the final crash sequences using mock-ups were so convincing that most viewers assumed real helicopters were destroyed. The debate illustrates tensions between artistic vision and military equipment control. Number 1. One of the Black Hawks still flies in Army service today. At least one Black Hawk used in Black Hawk Down remains in active U.S. Army service over 20 years after filming. After production wrapped in 2001, all 8 helicopters returned to military service with the 160th SOAR. They were restored to standard configuration and resumed operational duties. These helicopters have since deployed to Afghanistan, Iraq, and other combat zones, participating in genuine military operations. One specific airframe, identified by its tail number visible in the film, has been photographed in Afghanistan as recently as 2019. Aviation enthusiasts and film fans track military helicopter movements online, occasionally identifying Black Hawk Down aircraft still flying. The helicopter has accumulated thousands of additional flight hours since filming, participating in real operations far more dangerous than anything depicted in the movie. The aircraft received multiple upgrades over 2 decades, including improved engines, modernized avionics, and updated defensive systems. It bears little internal resemblance to the helicopter that flew in Morocco. However, its basic airframe remains the same structure that appeared on screen. This continuity between Hollywood and actual military operations creates a unique connection. The helicopter that portrayed Operation Gothic Serpent has since flown in actual special operations missions. The distinction between recreation and reality has blurred for this particular aircraft. The Black Hawks and Black Hawk Down transcended their role as military equipment to become bridges between Hollywood recreation and combat reality. From Mogadishu veterans flying cameras to aircraft still serving in war zones, every rotor blade carried the weight of authentic sacrifice and continuing service.